Well, I have this channel, YouTube channel, listed as an educational channel, and I don't want to bore you to death, but I want to explain something to you with the upcoming credit crunch. Now, this is not a doom and gloom video here. I'm not going to get onto like the population estimates of the future and all that, but man, I don't know about Deagle.com, man. That was some pretty, it's wild, but I don't know. But let me explain to you what credit crunch really is, and it's, well, I'm going to give you enlighten you on a couple angles a lot of people don't really tell you about. Now, for example, okay, what is really credit based upon? Credit is based upon an asset. In other words, if you have something of value you're going to buy, maybe I can lend you the money for it, but the bank holds the mortgage on the land or whatever. I mean, just like the creditary expansion that happened in the 2000s and broke with the real estate bubble that broke in 2007. It's based upon an asset, and then when there's speculation, the asset prices can go higher and higher and higher. And that's like a catch-all cliche word, speculation. But sometimes just the fact that people are lending more money's available for lending, causes people to buy wildly into some scheme or whatever it is. Just like the tech boom, just like what happened in 1920s where people were borrowing money to go into the stock market. Now here I'm showing the California gold rush. Now, what can I say more about this, right? This is really a super example of, what happened during a real credit crunch. At first, there's great expansion. People were getting unimaginably wealthy. And, when the gold was first discovered at Sutter's Mill, everybody was pouring into California, the Golden State, right? Well, times have changed, obviously. But, yeah, I mean, that's really what the deal was, right? So what happened, though, not only was there speculation, well, not only was there an increase of railway traffic, shipping traffic, there was also the land values in California went up exponentially. There was a whole industry built up around the miners. And, 1848 was basically when it started. By 1857, we had the Panic of 1857. In other words, the bubble had broken. Now, I don't want to use that word, the bubble has broken, really, that expression. But basically, things get out of hand. Now, today, we have astronomical records on credit. It's 3 or 4 times, it's 3.5 times higher. The creditary expansion is 3.5 times higher than when the bubble broke in 2008. Now, actually, that's really been one of the main reasons why the United States has expanded since the 50s. It's been on credit. Now, underlying this credit are assets. So, what happened here with the gold rush, they basically they got all the easy gold, and after a while it started getting harder and harder to find where their other gold was, and it was getting more effort to get into where gold, they found all of it. So basically that was the end of that rush to California, and then with that, the traffic in the railroads depleted, the shipping industry depleted. In other words, there was less traffic on the railroads. The stocks went down. The investments that were, stocks, the railroad stocks went down. The railroad equities went down because of less travel west. The mining stocks, equities that were sold, all of a sudden they lost a lot of value because people found out the reality situation. The mines were running dry again, right? The land values out west that people were selling land for, in the beginning they were dirt cheap. They went up, 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 up. Then all of a sudden the land values collapsed. People were buying these things on credit. Banks were holding land back then. Actually, this is really the major factor that led to the war between the states in 1861, 1865, really. It really did. Um, but separate subject. I put that out on other videos, and I know the powers that be, Google and all that, don't like anything that's pro-Southern. I noticed that, but I put them out anyway. They probably don't like my whole channel for that reason. But you know what happened? We all know what happened in 2008, 2009. A lot of problems, right? What's going to happen this time is infinitesimally worse, if that's the correct word. But you see, anytime credit is expanded, it's based upon an asset price. Now, one place we've had some asset inflation actually has been amongst the type of assets the most wealthy invest in. Donald Trump has been made a lot more money, and he's got a lot more net worth because the particular type of land he has, the commercial real estate ventures he has went up a lot. Not real estate in general in the United States. It's not been doing well in the United States, but the type of prime commercial real estate that Donald Trump has held over the last years has, propelled him up a lot in net worth. That can actually turn around for him. That's just a side note. But everything is really, all credit is really based upon an underlying asset. Now, one of the ways to really snowball, one of the problems, back in the time when all these booms and busts happened in the 1800s, one of the things you could rely on was that you could, the money itself was an asset. That was another thing. If you were holding gold and silver, that was an asset in itself. The other thing was people were far more independent. As a matter of fact, a lot of times economic problems back east spurred people to go west. It wasn't just the lure of California gold or anything like that. Even the 1816 time in New England when there was snow in June, July, and August, believe it or not, due to an eruption of a volcano on the other side of the world that caused a lot of shielding of the sun's rays, made New England so cold, a lot of people just got up and left. Today, the world is vastly changed because people are, attuned to only living in the cities. They really can't escape from the cities. And also, people really don't have as many options to go to as they did in the past. Now, I know in the past, this was all American Native people's Indian territory. Of course, the white man considered it their own and put values on it and took it and, took loans to go to these properties, right? Which basically a value came out of something from nothing. Land that was basically valued at zero, once it became a farm, could also be sold for much more money because it was a productive farm, because somebody took all the rocks out of the land and all that type of stuff. Now, the deal is, with this creditary expansion, it's every case, it's always reliant upon the underlying asset. There's always something there that's an underlying asset. Now, the problem with the banks, though, is a lot of times, what you're really supposed to do, I'm not familiar with banking accounting, but regular accounting, it's showed at cost or market, and typically cost, when you're showing a balance sheet, you show an asset at cost. Even if the asset went up 1,000 times, you don't show it at market value, you show it at cost. Pretty much, the assumption is the asset is at cost because it always goes up. But in other cases, the asset goes down, and that's where, you might have bought it high at a time when speculation was running strong, and speculation was fueled by creditary expansion from the banks. And their balance sheets will look really nice, but the problem is they really don't have the real value there. They'll be showing houses that are, $250,000 that could probably be sold for $50,000, and actually, those are times when the books should be adjusted down. You should be showing the true market value. That doesn't really happen too often, so a lot of times people don't think of it. But what they do with the banks, a lot of times, is show that they're healthy, because as long as they don't have a cash flow crunch, they'll lie. So they can just keep getting new business and go ahead and charge more interest on more loans. And this way they look, it looks like, oh, they're healthy. They're still healthy. That's where things lead into a major problem, you know. And it all comes to a crunching halt at once. It our economy today is astronomically, I don't know how to say this exactly, phrase it astronomically. Is that it's exponentially it has exponentially increased its creditary expansion over the years, even since 2008. Underlying assets, once they drop in value that the creditary expansion is based upon, there's going to be a credit freeze. That's actually what happened or almost happened in September 28th, 2008. A complete halt of the banking system. Now, if there is a credit freeze and a complete halt of the banking system due to the expansionary credit just stopping and people drawing out money, in other words, money that actually does not exist except in the form of credit which is based upon assets that are like these houses I'm showing here, the banking default is not going to last forever, okay? I think this is coming up, and I know when it does come up, I already know what's going to happen on those channels that scare the crap out of people. They're going to be saying the end is near. There will be a stop or a freeze in maybe your ATM machines. I know this sounds ludicrous today. I'm sorry, but that's what I'm thinking is going to happen. It's not going to last forever, though. And this is also another reason you should print your statements. Today, like on your banking, your banks, everything's electronic, and you have an electronic statement, and they'll send you an email, your statement's ready. Make sure you print your statements, because if there's ever a problem where that information is not accessible for a while, or they have problems with their management information systems, and they say, oh, sorry, we lost your account, you want printed statements. If you have printed statements and there's a really bad banking credit default thing going on, like that makes 2008 look like nothing, you'll eventually get your money back, and it may not be in the same dollars strength that would had when the crunch happened, but you will get your money back eventually. So I don't want to have that kind of fear in here, but the reality situation is accounting basically on major companies, banks, any financial institution, is basically like a Photoshop operation. I hate to say this because, I'm an accountant myself, but that's really what it is. You've seen many of the best, it used to be the big eight, with the accounting firms, and it went down. They got to keep chopped down due to Enron problems that they had with Enron. It went to the big three, and then, it's even supposedly the best and the brightest cheat too. I mean, that's why they're freaking the best and the brightest. But basically, everything that's shown by the government and also the large corporations on the books is basically like a Photoshop operation. And this allows the credit to keep expanding. You're looking at, what do you want to lay down money on? The young, beautiful woman, or the older, wrinkly one? It's kind of like what it is. I don't know if I would get some people pissed off at that. But, yeah, the thing is, that's really what it is. Does do things appear rosy? Well, let's just keep going ahead. It's like the engine is running fine. Let's go another 100 miles. And the reality of the situation is, it's actually breaking down, and somebody didn't check the oil or whatever the hell it is. I don't really think the United States is going to fall apart. I think the major problem is going to be in the cities. But, we've always survived in simpler times before, and maybe that's just what it's going to be. It doesn't mean people are going to be totally unhappy or anything like that. I mean, in the 1800s, I mean, people were just as happy or sad as they are today, right? I mean, it's just a different lifestyle. And actually, once you get used to that lifestyle, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. But the reality situation is the politicians are basically like this picture I'm showing here. It's like they just have like a video projector of a new talking head up there with the same podium, the same seal, with the same rhetoric that they're taking care of things, the same, appearance of strength. They're always playing this game. Actually, I shouldn't really deride Trump because I'm definitely not a fan of Hillary Clinton, but I don't really think this guy is going to save America. No way in hell. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to happen, man. It's not going to happen. Be prepared. Be prepared. Hopefully I did explain. I'm going to get back to re-explain a little bit again about the credit crunch thing, because this is where people don't get it. Like these houses, when they're brand new, and maybe it's not, I don't want to give this as, don't think of it as a die-hard example, but basically this is like going on across the board. People lent, $250,000 each for each one of these houses or whatever from the bank. Now they're probably worth, maybe they're worth $10 or something. I don't know, because they got to be there's so much renovation that's needed. They probably want to give them away because they want somebody to pay the taxes on them. Now the banks, expanded credit upon what was done here. But that illusion is still on the books. The books, I'm not saying this is like a, exact example, but this is basically what's going on throughout everywhere. Everything is an illusion when you're talking about the way accounting is actually done in the United States. Not the way it should be done, but the way it actually is done. Everything is an illusion. And as long as people have the cash, as long as there's enough cash to keep things flowing, fine. But when there's fear and panic, what happens is the biggest most important people, the ones that with the most assets or the most net worth, they tend, when they get fearful, they pull cash out of the system. And when they do that, there isn't enough left for everybody else to pull cash out, because the cash is based upon credit. It's like all our money, I shouldn't say it that way, actually all our money that we see that's exchanging hands is not actually money, even if it's in electronic dollars or paper dollars, and usually it's electronic dollars, it's credit. If the credit is based upon garbage like these houses and other assets like this, and it becomes realized, it's gone. We've expanded our credit since 2008 3.5 times. Yes, who's making the money on that credit? The banksters. No doubt about it, because it's interest. No credit is interest free. If there is credit interest free, I'll take it. If you're gonna lend me, if I could just keep borrowing like a couple $1 million every year, never have to pay it back with no schedule, and there's no interest involved in it, I think I would do that all the time. No problem. I don't care how much you say you owe me, as long as it's not legally bound that I have to pay you back on any schedule and there's no interest involved. There's always interest involved. And that's how the banks are making their money. So they're involved in this scheme to make the assets look a lot better than they should be. And they were involved in this scheme back in the real estate boom too. But we've expanded credit now in a host of other ways since the end of the real estate boom. It's expanded in the United States 3.5 times. Now, I like to give that example about the California gold rush because actually the events of the California gold rush and the corollary Western movement, expansion of credit, You know, the equities in the railroads going up, the land values going up, also the merchants that grew up around this industry, um, actually all fell apart when the gold rush petered out because they mined most of the gold they mined the gold that was easy to find. Now, that actually led to the Civil War, or the war between the states, or the War of Northern Aggression, probably justifiably called the War of Northern Aggression, because the solution to the credit crunch in the Panic of 1857 was to ultimately raise the taxes on the South, cotton tariffs 250%. And the South said, no way, we're out of here. But this is something like, I don't know if I'm getting it across, but the type of credit expansion we got today is astronomically worse than what happened in the 1840s and 1850s. Not alone even what happened during the 2000s. So, you know, when it's like everything on the books can't be trusted. You're supposed to, it's very easy, you know, it's very easy to just keep carrying things at cost. And the assumption is the market's always going up. But there was a lot of areas where the markets are actually going down. And, well, let me give you an example, the retail markets. If you look at what's been going on Black Friday and also Christmas time over the last several years, the retail markets in the United States absolutely suck. They're terrible. Yet, you know, somehow these people are still operating on a very thin razor margin, and you're not seeing, well, you're starting to see some retail chains go down, like Macy's is having major problems, for instance. As a matter of fact, the more high-end clothing chains are having problems, and that's an indication that people don't have money. And also, you're seeing a lot of the restaurateurs have problems too today in some areas of the country. Even fast food industry is slowing down quite a bit because it's cheaper to eat at home and people are saving money. But that's another indication that people are trying to hoard cash, and there isn't enough cash out there to hoard, because all the money that's in circulation is mainly credit. It's expanded 3.5 times, even from the time we had the mass major credit crunch in 2008. If this happens again, there's going to be a banking freeze. Not a banking collapse like forever. There's going to be some entities that are going to go down, and I don't know, probably the way out of it is going to be inflation, because the one area that has not expanded drastically, I know they're trying to hold this back until, you know, the election to get Miss Hillary elected, the flu bug lady, the hacking, fainting lady, or her clone, whatever. That's another story. I wonder if she's got a clone, for crying out loud. The lady came out of there right away, and she's like walking around, hi, hugging a kid right after she fainted. I was like, is that the same Hillary? Anyway, but yeah, I mean, they're not going to be able to hold it together the way they think they're going to be able to hold it together. And when it comes down, it's going to come down hard, just, you know, as we've all been saying all along. But people don't really understand this deal about what money and credit really is. And, you know, that's one of the real reasons why the founding fathers were against the U.S., you know, a central bank of the U.S.A., where they can keep expanding credit and artificially create booms and busts. You know, that's what Andrew Jackson was about. But these underlying assets they're losing value left and right. And today it's not necessarily in the real estate market. Now, it might be, I think, actually in the Trump's area. He's done extremely well over the last years, because the type of real estate he's invested in has went up astronomically. So that's why he's got so much money now, theoretically. But, you know, you always got to find a buyer. That's the deal. That's also the problem even with when the metals go up. There's going to be a limit. They're not going to go to the moon. you know, there's going to be a time when they go up far, far more than they should. And, if you're running a few lucky smart ones, you'll dump them at the right time and buy something that's smart again. But not everybody's going to be a winner, that's for sure. But when things do collapse this time, it's not. I don't want to put it like I'm trying to paint a picture that's different from what the other people are doing. In other words, we're in uncharted territory completely. Maybe that's been said before, but we're in an area now whereby, if even though we have electronic accounts and everything can be done at the speed of light, still that same basic premise is that all money that's being changed hands right now is in a form of credit, and credit is based upon underlying assets. When those underlying assets can't, if there's a cash crunch and those underlying assets can't be sold, and the values go down more and more and more, and that's due to people not buying in a retail store. So if the retail stores wants to do something, needs to sell some buildings, and they can't sell them for what they think. If Walmart's closing some buildings and they can't sell them for what they think, it's just gonna have a snowballing effect. One of the reasons the United States expanded and did so well back in the 1800s and the 1700s, and I know some people say it's over slavery, but I'm going to tell you what it really was mainly over, because the white man, he wasn't working for basically anything either back then. It was stealing the properties from the American native peoples. That's really where a lot of the money came from back then in the 1700s and 1800s. Free land from the American native peoples. Now, right now, there's nothing left. I mean, it's like we're reaping what we sown. And today, basically, the whole United States has become a reservation for everybody, whether they're white, black, Asian, or whatever, Mexican. I don't know, Mexican. Well, whatever, Hispanic, whatever, right? We're all pretty much on the reservation today, because we reap what we sow. We let these guys that are in the corporate and corporations and the banksters get away with all this bullshit. It's one reason to kind of avoid getting in debt at all costs, and number two, there's another reason not to deal with banks as much as possible. But you still have to deal with them, because right now, any way we buy things is through the banking system. As a matter of fact, if you're on the internet watching this or listening to this, you paid for it through your bank or your credit card or whatever it is for your internet access. So the reality of the situation is we're not going to be off that completely, but that's still feeding the machine. But the machine is coming to a halt. There's no doubt about it. The credit crunch is almost upon us. And unlike the gold rush of 1848 leading to the Panic of 1857 leading to the war between the states of 1861, this time around it's probably going to be a hell of a lot worse than that. And I don't even count on YouTube being around, because YouTube can go, even before this happens, it can go the way of MySpace. It's always a matter of the management sometimes has a way of screwing things up, you know what I'm saying? Although they think they know the best, right? So just remember that appearances that show on the balance sheets of companies and what the government's publishing for data on the consumer price index, the unemployment index, and the health of the economy, the GDP, and it's not reality. It's almost as if it's a Photoshop picture. And the U.S. infrastructure itself is actually aging drastically. We have problems with our bridges and things. These things should be addressed. Actually, they got the money to do that. I mean, they should be spending the money there, but they're not. you know what it is? I'm just gonna have to leave you with this thought. It really is not. I shouldn't even put this out like a doom and gloom. They don't know what they're doing. They're doing this on purpose. This is all part of the global plan to even out all nations, whereby all nations are basically poor, and there's going to be a select group of elite that think they're going to run the world. Well, I got news for them. I don't think they're going to. I don't think they're going to, because I think you're going to get caught up in a whirlwind of the abyss when it comes down, when the problems really start coming down. But credit is really the main reason why we're going to go into an implosion in our economic activities, because all credit is based upon assets. The assets are artificially inflated. They're on the books as still strong, and actually they're deteriorating, they're aging, or there's no market for these assets. If there was ever had to be a time where the bank's holding these assets and they think they need to sell them off for get the cash they need, they're not going to be able to. That's what happened in 2008. Except today, credit has expanded 3.5 times since 2008. And all these smoke and mirror politicians, they're not going to be able to do nothing about it. I think Trump is actually aware of this stuff too, man. I don't really totally trust this guy, but I know I'm definitely not taking Hildebeest, man. No way, no. No way, no. So, I mean, that's a given, okay? But don't think the world's going to change due to a politician. We need to go back to basics, and nobody is. That's the problem. Everybody thinks they want to get rich, like the gold rush in California, 1848. Kind of works for the first people that are involved in it, but it don't work for anybody coming later on. Most people get there too late, and that's really the reality of the situation. Credit is going to bite us in the ass this time so bad, it's going to be beyond imaginable. And it's just like an axiom. It's like saying, 2 + 2 = 4. It's not fear-mongering or nothing. All credit is based upon assets prices. And these asset prices are artificially inflated on the books, or they're deteriorated, and they're never going to be able to sell these assets for what they think they can, whether it's a company or whatever it is, or just land, or and you saw what happened with the shale oil industry. Yeah, have fun trying to sell that stuff today at the price, with the price of oil the way it is right now. But where the money's probably going to go eventually is going to be into commodities. But that's going to hurt the average consumer vastly, because commodities is your everyday expenses. It's your food and your fuel and your car. It's your home heating oil. It's copper. It's that goes into pretty much most of the products that we use, the most widely used industrial metal. It's, people that have some metals, it's going to help them, but they're probably going to need those metals to save their ass. So that's what's going to happen.